Welcome to Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer, a podcast where testicular cancer survivors, caregivers, and others who have navigated the cancer journey share their stories. The podcast comes to you from the Max Mallory Foundation, a nonprofit family foundation focused on educating about testicular cancer in honor and in memory of Max Mallory, who died in 2016 at the young age of 22 from testicular cancer. Had he survived, Max wanted to help young adults with cancer. This podcast helps meet that goal. Here now is your host, Joyce Lofstrom, Max's mom and a young adult cancer survivor.
Hi, this is Joyce, and with me today is Dr. James Hamrick, MD, MPH. He's the chairman of the Caris Precision Oncology Alliance, which is known as Caris POA, at Caris Life Sciences. He leads a global network of top cancer centers, research institutions dedicated to advancing precision oncology, biomarker-driven research, which he will tell us all about. Dr. Hamrick's board certified in internal medicine, medical oncology, and hematology, earned his MD and MPH in epidemiology from the University of North Carolina, and his residency and fellowship at the University of California in San Francisco. So, Dr. Hamrick, welcome.
Joyce, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And obviously, this is material that is near and dear to my heart. So happy to discuss it with you today.
That's great. Just tell us a little bit about your interest in oncology, hematology, how you got going with these specialties in medicine.
Yeah, I think I knew from a fairly early age that I wanted to be a physician. I'm the son of a physician. And originally, I was interested in science and also in sort of patient stories. And actually, originally thought when I started medical school that I would probably do general primary care. And I still think that a great primary care doctor is really the best of the best doctors because they have to kind of know something about everything. But as I proceeded along through medical school and my training, a couple of things happened. One, I got very interested in some of the science of blood disorders and cancers. And this was late in my medical school period at the University of North Carolina, and then during my residency at University of California, San Francisco. So really intrigued by the science and some of the pretty amazing advances that were being made at that time. This would have been, I'm dating myself, but the late 1990s, early 2000s, which it turns out was sort of the beginning of an era of really understanding at a much deeper level than we ever had what exactly is causing these tumors, what's making the cells go bad, and how can we take that understanding and lead to better treatment. So that was really fascinating, but still oncology, when you're a cancer specialist, you sort of become the primary care doctor or patients with cancer. And so deciding to specialize in blood and cancer disorders allowed me to continue to have this sort of whole patient viewpoint where I am kind of the primary care doctor for the patient, but also be a witness to and a participant in all of the amazing innovation breakthroughs that were happening in oncology. So I decided to pursue my oncology hem-onc fellowship and did that, and spent about 10 years after my training in full-time practice, and then made a leap, which we can talk about, into industry, but continued to see patients up until fairly recently as well. So that's kind of
okay. I like what you said about how the oncologist becomes like the primary care doctor in terms of taking care of patients and just knowing everything about that person. So I think I just speak from personal experience of my own, but with my son too. So it's just important, I think, for our listeners to hear that and remember that. So
yeah, it really is important because, first of all, typically, at least early in the course of treatment, as the oncologist, I'm seeing the patient much more frequency than primary care doc. I'm aware of sort of interactions that might happen with medications their primary care doc has them on, and treatments that I might start. And this for patients and caregivers, usually, especially in that early, initial diagnosis and initial treatment and treatment planning phase, it is like a full-time job to all of your appointments.
Yep,
Last thing that I want is for a patient to have to then go see a whole nother set of doctors just to
Right.
get one medication. I'll just refill your darn blood pressure. And
Yep.
that is exactly.
Tell us now a little bit about what you're doing with Caris Precision Oncology Alliance, what it is, just
Yeah.
how it helps cancer patients.
So this is really one of the main reasons that I wound up at Caris. So when Caris is a diagnostics company, sort of by initial mission, really helping physicians and patients and researchers have better understanding, as I said before, into what's going wrong at the
Yeah.
cellular level to cause these cancers. And the founders of Caris had the wisdom back in 2008 when they founded the company to realize that, hey, as we build out molecular testing of tumors at scale, there's going to be a lot of really potentially useful data that gets spun out as a byproduct of just doctors taking care of patients
Hmm.
using our technology, et cetera. And so they realized, and no credit to James Hamrick because I wasn't there at the time. I was practicing medicine, but they realized that we should partner with the smartest investigators available to understand how to use that data. So suddenly we're going to know a lot about a lot of different, so testicular cancer patients, lung cancer patients, breast cancer patients. We're going to understand a lot at a molecular level of what's going on. If we can share that data, combine it with what we call clinical data, which, hey, what happened to this patient? What treatments did they get? How did they do? That could be really useful to investigators. And so the Precision Oncology Alliance is Caris's way of sharing that data with the smartest investigators in the field. So what happens is we put it into a format that's useful. So we now have nearly 500,000 patients.
Mm.
We've sequenced close to 1 million patients, but we take that and we de-identify. That data is used to take care of those patients and
Mm.
be shared with their doctors, et cetera, and the patient to take care of them. We then de-identify the data in what's called a HIPAA compliant way,
Mhm.
meaning
Right.
there's no way that can be traced back to an individual patient. We de-identify the molecular data, we combine it with the clinical data that we have on what treatments did they get. We have about 500,000 patients now in a data set that we can go to investigators. We have now 99 partners,
Mm.
Caris Precision Oncology Alliance, and they can write brief, like 2-page research proposals that say, hey, I'm interested in a new question related to a biomarker in testicular cancer or lung cancer or breast cancer. I'd like to query against your data to write up a publication. And it's been really productive. So we just crossed a pretty significant threshold where we've now had over 1,000 scientific publications
Mm.
in partnership with these investigators at many of the cancer centers that everyone's heard of that are helping to drive the science forward. So we're
Wow.
really proud of that. As James Hamrick, that's what attracted me to this job, not only helping an individual patient, but also helping to drive the science
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. That's key right there, the science that you talk
Yep.
about. So
Yeah.
I know when I first introduced you, we talked about precision oncology, biomarker-driven research, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
forth. Tell us what that really means and how that
Yeah.
creates a personalized approach for cancer treatment.
So this era that I've practiced in from like the late 90s up until now, there's really been a revolution in
Yeah.
terms of understanding what exactly, as I've mentioned a couple of times, okay, we know this is a lung cancer, let's say, or a testicular cancer or a breast cancer. It turns out there are lots of different types of lung cancer or breast cancer and even testicular cancer. The more we can understand the specific type of, let's say, a lung cancer that it is, the better we can tailor treatments specifically to that one patient and their tumor. So rather than just treating, hey, Mrs. Jones, you've got lung cancer,
Right.
we're going to treat all lung cancers the same, we can get very precise in terms of understanding what is the science, what is the molecular biology that's driving that tumor. So in lung cancer, there is a gene, EGFR gene, epidermal growth factor receptor. You don't need to remember any of that. All you need to know is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there's a gene that for a certain batch, about 20% of non-small cell lung cancer is driving. It's what we call the driver mutation. It's the mutation that's causing all this badness. The more we understand about that gene, we actually now have therapies that target directly at that
Wow.
gene and its
Wow.
products. And so what does that mean? When we treat a cancer, it's all about hitting the cancer, the bad part, and not hurting the rest of the person. And so the more we understand about the targets that we should be hitting in these tumors, the better we can design treatments that just hit those targets and leave the rest of the cells in a person's body alone. What does that mean? It means fewer side effects. So more effectiveness. So when you hear precision medicine, think about, this is where my doctor is not just treating me for cancer, not just
Right.
treating me for lung cancer, but is working to understand exactly what is driving my cancer and how can we best target that. So I have the best outcome, meaning we can kill those cancer cells
Right.
and the fewest side effects. That's really precision oncology. Biomarkers, we all know from high school biology class, the life sciences,
Mm.
markers are the targets. So these are the targets that we can now, using Caris technology and other vendors, we can say, hey, that's the problem here. It's not just one testicular cell that went bad. It's one that has this certain molecular profile.
Wow.
So I tell patients, you should ask your doctors, hey, what biomarkers do we care about? What is important? What are we targeting? What's valuable here? And that's part of becoming fluent in the language
Mm.
of your cancer, which, as many caregivers know, is really important.
Just to know that term, what biomarkers are, that's a great
Yeah.
piece of information to have.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me how you work with all the different the medical centers and researchers
Yeah.
that are part of finding this information. How does that work?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work to let the investigators at all of the POA sites know we have a what we call sort of a dashboard. It's software where they can actually log in
Okay.
and they can say, "Hey, I'm interested in a colon cancer with this particular type of molecular profile,"
Wow.
and we can say, "Good news, we've got 3 or 4 thousand patients in
That,
our data set, all fully de-identified, who you can begin to ask questions with." So we have a process whereby they can write an application to look at the data, then we help them with the analytics.
okay.
And that very often leads to a couple of things. First of all, presentations at scientific meetings. So there are big scientific meetings where all cancer
Yep.
doctors come together. There's a big one in Chicago every spring called ASCO. There are also smaller ones where they're just focusing on, let's say, genitourinary cancers, or they're just focusing on gastrointestinal cancers. So our investigators that partner with us present at those meetings, and then they also wind up writing a full, what we call a peer-reviewed manuscript. What does that mean? It's a scientific paper
Right.
presented in a major scientific journal that's going to be read by many, many doctors. And it's been peer reviewed, meaning other scientists have read it critically and said,
Right.
this is valid, this isn't valid, these are the unanswered
Right.
questions. So we have that process whereby they can do original research using our data in partnership with us. And we let them ask the questions. It's not they ask better questions than we do at
Right.
Caris most of the time. In addition, we nurture communities of researchers. So because we have 99 members. There may be a couple contracts that are closing, but between
Yeah.
97 and
Yeah.
improving daily, because we have so many members, what we'll do is we have different disease groups where we'll have a regular cadence of scientific calls with investigators, doctors and scientists from all these different centers who are interested, let's say, in genitourinary cancers or lung cancers or breast cancer or whatever. And those doctors can get together and hear, hey, what's the research that's happening now with the Caris data? And what other questions can we answer? Or, hey, I'd like to be a part of that project. So it's a really nice collaborative community
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
researcher. And that's a lot of the fun of my job. We get together then in person at the big meetings and we'll usually have a dinner and then we'll hear scientific talks from members in the group. And so
Um,
it's a lot of fun and it's very collaborative as well.
yeah. It sounds like a lot of fun, and it's also the outcomes that you're all together creating. It's just fascinating. But so I've seen on your website, the Caris website, a lot of the different patient stories and
Yeah.
recognizing HIPAA. I'm not asking for names or details of specific people, but can you give us a couple examples of how what you're doing has helped a patient?
Yeah, so a common scenario will be we're in a moment of evolution where as I said, just over the course of my career, we've gone from sort of thinking, okay, lung cancer is all lung cancers to understanding, wait, there are several different types. And we started with things where we might just test for one specific biomarker to understand, hey, is this, for example, in breast cancer, patients that are caregivers that have dealt with breast cancer might be familiar with, is this a quote, HER2 positive breast
Right,
cancer?
right.
That's a specific biomarker. And early in my career, early 2000s, we might just test for that one biomarker, or maybe let's say in lung cancer, 3 to 8 different biomarkers. And so we'll hear a lot about a patient who does an initial test for just one or a small panel of biomarkers, and they're given a limited set of treatment options. And then when those treatments stop working, they'll often come and they'll say, I want to do a more comprehensive panel. So this is where we really have invested and where we are among the leaders. Our testing is very comprehensive. So we don't test just for one or two known biomarkers. We test all of the what's called whole exome sequencing. And all you need to know about that is it's all of the DNA in our cells as humans
Hmm.
that actually is coding, is making proteins. So we test for all of that. We also test, and I'm going to push everyone on their science memory, test all of the RNA. So
Okay.
we do very broad testing that's not just saying, let me find one or two biomarkers. Let's look at everything that might be possible and even things that might become, there's no
Yeah.
treatment for it today, but in a year there might be a clinical trial. So we hear a lot of stories where people say, when once they got the comprehensive profiling done by Caris, we discovered a new target, one that actually
Okay.
has a drug or has a clinical trial open. And in some cases, these are the happiest days at the company and everywhere. That new treatment leads to a remarkable response. That's sort of an illustration of why we decided to go very broad early on. There's a case that we have up on our website of a woman who had ovarian cancer and sort of exhausted the standard therapies and then got Caris testing done and realized they were a candidate for immunotherapy, which is immuno means immune system and therapy means treatment. There are some treatments now that everyone's probably seen ads on TV for that. They leverage the immune system to fight the cancer. And so we hear a lot of cases like that are just, it's as an oncologist, it's remarkable to see because these were patients that even just 20 years ago, you were having a hospice conversation with,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
now some of them will go into a complete remission. So it's really gratifying and validates the work that Caris and many others are doing these days.
Well, I'm just going to share a personal story quickly.
Love that. Yeah.
I've had thyroid cancer now 4 times, papillary thyroid
Wow.
cancer, and it just came back in my
Oh,
lung. There's a spot in my lung, and it's a good outcome. So I went to an oncologist
yep.
in Chicago who basically said, well, we don't do radioactive iodine treatment as much anymore because now we can test the tissue like I had a biopsy and look at different genes, and he named them, and I can't remember them. But
Yeah.
so I have this gene in my cancer tissue, and so you have this medicine that you take that would have fewer side effects, which
Yeah.
is a brand new, it's kind of like what you're talking about, I think. It's a brand new thing for me because I was like, wow, I didn't know that.
So that's exactly it. And from a patient perspective, it's how can we understand more about this particular tumor so that we can find all of the possible treatments? And that happens a lot, which is
Does
wonderful.
it? Okay.
Yeah, but it's part of this being comprehensive, You really don't want to leave any stone unturned because there are a lot of cases where the one thing we find, there are some very rare alterations called NTRK, NTRK, and that's an abbreviation, fusions, that they're only present maybe in 1 to 3% of certain types of tumors. But if you have one of those and if you've looked for it, you can have a remarkable response.
Mm,
We're as oncologists, we're conservative. We rarely will say a cure
right.
because it's hard to guarantee someone a cure, but a long-term remission. And we know
Yeah.
that many of those do actually wind up being people who wind up being cured. So it's important to be comprehensive and sort of overturn every stone.
Well, you mentioned testicular cancer and related cancers. Can you talk a little bit about testicular cancer as relates? I mean, is this an option that, or in the
Yes.
works, or?
Yeah, so right now we have traditional biomarkers in testicular cancer, so beta HCG and
Yeah.
DH and AFP, and those are biomarkers, but they're not the genetic ones that we're talking about. Testicular cancer is at this point still one of the ones where we're looking for the most useful biomarkers.
Okay.
And so we don't have, apart from those sort of traditional ones, we don't have a new one that's leading to targeted therapy today, but there is a lot of investigation there. So unlocking what is the driver in testicular cancer is a big priority. And even though cure rates are high for some patients, there's still an unmet need in testicular cancer. There are some active areas of investigation where we're identifying molecular markers that can help us drive better outcomes for that disease. That's one of the ones that's tougher to crack. Testicular. Pancreatic is another one where it's hard to identify. Cure rates are still way too low in that disease. I would say testicular cancer is an area of active investigation, and there's still an unmet need there. Even though so many patients do well,
Right.
there's still an unmet need there to drive home so that everyone benefits from the era of therapy. So as we accrue data there, this is exactly the kind of question that investigators can say, hey, testicular cancer is my specialty. Can we look at a cut of your data to ask this question or that question?
Oh, great. That's good to know. Do you think this will become, longevity-wise, standard of care?
So absolutely, molecular profiling, it is standard of care. I think where we are now is getting to where comprehensive profiling, where instead of just saying, hey, we're just going to look at these 5 or 1, 5, 10 known markers, casting a wider net and saying, actually, let's look at the entire genome. Let's look at the entire transcriptome. Let's look at the entire exome. Those are technical terms for being broader. And it's sort of a way of saying there's a lot going on in these cancers at the molecular level that will help us understand how to better treat them. Let's cast a broader net. So to answer your question, will molecular testing become standard of care? It already is. It already has. I think it's being more comprehensive. That is the next step. And then the other super important piece is equity of access to this type of testing. So it's moving, it's new enough and moving fast enough that as a general oncologist, it can be really hard to keep up with exactly what is the right test I should order, how do I get it covered by a payer. And so making sure that everyone, not just the patients that have the means and the resources to say, I Googled this and I chat GPT did and what, but everyone has access to this is a real priority. And so that's the other challenge and opportunity for the field.
Okay. Wow. Lots going on then. I think you probably answered. My next question was what's next for you or for your career or anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, we are at the beginning of the era of unlocking what we can know about tumors and about things like cancer prevention. We're at the beginning of that era. So I'm excited to be at a company that has taken a comprehensive approach and is taking a long view because I think we can see the potential and it's going to take time to understand, hey, how can we not only treat cancers better, how can we increase our cure rates, and ultimately, how can we actually begin to prevent cancers? So I'm happy to be part of that, and that's where I want to spend the remainder of my career. I would say to everyone, it's a very exciting time. Are there still unmet needs? Of course there are, and there will be, but it's a very exciting time with the progress we're making.
I think we all like to hear that, the cancer prevention term. That's good to know it's in the works. So
it's becoming more of a reality, and that's exciting. Yeah.
So my last question is, what song, when you hear it, do you have to sing along?
So it's a great question. I don't know if you watched, there was recently a Billy Joel documentary. They had a wonderful quote. They said, they were talking about the song Piano Man, and they said, I can tell you one thing. Wherever you are when the song Piano Man comes on, you're going to spend the next 5 minutes singing Piano Man. And I think that's actually true. So I'm going to say Piano Man is probably my favorite sing-along song.
That's a great song. It's a good one to sing to, too. I like
really
that one.
Is. In fact, it's impossible not to sing to it every time it comes in.
Yeah. And the words those are words you can remember, too. Some songs I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't know all those words. But anyway.
And you can remember them, and they've got this great sort of every person quality to them. So, great.
Thanks so much, Dr. Hamrick, for taking the time to talk with me and my listeners. And thanks for all you're doing and what Caris is doing. Yeah, it's wonderful. So,
Joyce, thank you. And thank you for speaking up for the caregivers and everything. And it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Well, thanks.
Take care.
Okay, you too.
Thank you for watching this episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our program on your favorite podcast directory. You can also visit the Max Mallory Foundation at www.maxmalloryfoundation.com/podcast to listen to previous podcast episodes or donate to the foundation. Join us again next time for another episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer.